indeed for that warm introduction. I once was normal. I actually had a job. I used to get up in the morning, get a train to London and work. Unlike the bunch of college kids we've now got in politics who've given away our country. And they don't understand, they have no idea, actually, that we, the British people, are proud of who we are proud of those that went before us, and that we believe that the best people to govern Britain are the British people themselves through the ballot box, not the bureaucrats in Brussels. And yet the sheer gutlessness and weakness of our leaders was, I think, shown today by the Prime Minister. Now, that may be a difficult comment for the Conservative members of this panel, I don't know. One of them's left already, so maybe it is. But, well, they often bugger off when I speak, you know. But, I mean, he's still there. It's up to you, mate. I mean, stay or go, I don't mind. But to listen to David Cameron today, coming out with exactly the same arguments that Nick Clegg used against me in the European elections of 2014, what good it did him, I'm pleased to say. But for the Prime Minister to say that 3 million British jobs would be threatened if we left the European Union, for the Prime Minister to say, as he did at a car plant in Ellesmere Port, that unless we weren't part of this European Union, they wouldn't buy our motor cars, shows me he is a classic product of Oxbridge who went straight into being a political researcher. He's never bought or sold a good or a product in his life, because the facts are very simple. They're very, very simple. Just down the road from here in Sunderland, we have the Nissan car plant. It is now said to be the best and the most efficient car manufacturing plant in the world. And yes, a lot of those motor cars that are made in Sunderland are sold into the European markets. And that's good for Sunderland. It's good for the North East, and it's good for jobs. But the point, Prime Minister, or Dave, as he likes to call himself, didn't make it up, did I? The point, Prime Minister, is that we sell cars to Germany, but if you look out of your window, you'll see they sell cars to us. They sell us BMWs. They sell us Audis. They sell us Mercedes. And they used to sell us Volkswagens. And the point, Prime Minister, is they sell us 1 million motor cars a year more than we sell them. So it's in their interests to have a trade deal with Britain. And if 3 million British jobs are threatened by all trade ceasing, then there are 5 million jobs in Europe threatened by all trade ceasing. Can we get away from this complete and utter nonsense? And as we're here in the North East, which of course is the friendliest and most patriotic part of the entire United Kingdom, isn't it? That wasn't hard, that one, was it? Thought I might get a clap for that one. But as we're here, we're told that the great and the good in the North East think that it's vital that Britain stays part of the European Union. You know, the bankers and big businessmen in the North East think we must stay part of the European Union. And the politicians in the North East think we should stay part of the European Union. Indeed, some of the ex-politicians of the North East think we should stay part of the European Union, including the former Member of Parliament for Hartlepool, Lord Mandelson. You can do better than that. Lord Mandelson. Thank you. He is ghastly, isn't he? But these are the same figures. The Mandelsons, the bankers, the big businessmen, They're the same figures who told us if we didn't join the euro, we'd lose out on competitiveness, we'd lose out on trade. And they were wrong then, and they're wrong now. They're wrong now. And the Northeast, the big businesses in the Northeast will benefit by Britain being able to negotiate her own trade deals on the global stage. We're not talking, ladies and gentlemen, about leaving Europe. We're talking about leaving a political union called the EU. We are leaving the EU and we're rejoining the world. We want to make trade deals with other countries. And it strikes us on this panel that a very good place to start would be the 54 countries who share our language, share our history, share our culture, who like us and who stand by us in time of need. And the sooner we open ourselves up to a trade deal with the Commonwealth countries of the world, the better it will be for us and for them. But 95% of businesses in the Northeast do not export any goods to the EU at all. And yet they're bound by European regulation, every single one of them. And the argument is that actually, freed from this European Union, we can give the 5 million men and women that run small businesses in Britain an even break and a chance not to be regulated to death. Let's support the small and medium-sized businesses. Let's worry a bit less about the big businesses who employ fewer people. And while we're at it, the Prime Minister keeps telling us, wouldn't it be awful if we were like Norway? Wouldn't it be dreadful if we were like Norway? Imagine being rich. Imagine being free. And imagine having the other side of the North Sea, which the Norwegians have got. And they have a 200-mile exclusive economic zone, and all the fish that swim and are caught in those waters are owned by Norway. Any foreign boat that fishes within those 200 miles has to pay a fee to be there. And if they break the rules, the Norwegian Navy impound them and charge them 50,000 quid to get the boat back. Now, what does the Northeast have in common with Norway? We've got the North Sea. This part of our country could have 200 miles of the North Sea. And when we leave the European Union, we will claim back what is rightfully ours. We will claim back our territorial waters. We will claim back 200 miles of the North Sea, and from South Shields and Newcastle and all the way down the northeast coast of England, we will put back into work thousands of men and women back into the fishing industry. This referendum is actually very simple. This referendum is, do you think we should govern our own country? Do you think we should make our own laws? Do you think our parliament should be sovereign? Do you think our own Supreme Court should be supreme? And do you think that we should control our own borders and decide who comes to live, work and settle in our country? Well, I do. And I believe the fact that a British passport is now effectively open to 500 million people from Europe is plain and simply wrong. We do not need unlimited unskilled labour coming into our country from the whole of the rest of Europe, coming into our country from places like Romania and Bulgaria, where they're very much poorer. And what we've seen through mass uncontrolled immigration is people's wages being driven down, the living standards of good, ordinary British people being driven down to the advantage of big businesses and the big employers. And it's time we stood up for decent men and women and families in this country and said they should be able to earn a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. And the impact of this on the National Health Service, on the provision of school places, on all of our public services has been pretty severe. But if the other side have launched Project Fear, which they have, haven't they? Telling us that all trade would cease, that normal life would not function. In fact, they've been so extreme in their warnings. I think all they're left with is to tell us that if we left the European Union, a plague of locusts would descend upon our country. Well, let me just respond with saying what I think my fear is of us staying in. They tell us it's safer to stay in. They tell us it's more secure if we stay in. They tell us we'll be better off and happier and safer as part of this union. Well, I wouldn't call this union a huge success. Just look at the Eurozone. Look what it's done to Southern Europe. It has driven tens of millions of people in the Mediterranean countries into abject misery and poverty. But there is a problem that is now far, far bigger than that. And it is the EU's migrant crisis. The reason, ladies and gentlemen, that this referendum is taking place on the 23rd of June and not the 23rd of September is what the government knows is the migrant crisis is going to be worse this year than it was last year. And why? Why? Because the EU's common asylum policy sent out a message last April that anyone can come. And that error was compounded by Chancellor Merkel making the biggest political mistake we've seen in modern times in Europe by saying, please, everybody come. A disastrous mistake, one that should not have been made, but it was. And now people are coming in vast numbers. Some, yes, are people who would qualify historically as genuine refugees. But as somebody that has seen what is going on in Greece, has visited the jungle in Calais, let me tell you that most of the people that are coming do not qualify as refugees. They are economic migrants, and they're coming to us in numbers that are wholly unsustainable and unacceptable for our countries. And what has the response been of the European Union? Well, it's rather like if you get a bottle of champagne, which, being keen on buying French products, I often do, and sometimes getting the cork out of a champagne bottle can be a bit tricky. But once you've done it, putting it back in is impossible. So the message was sent, please come. Now to say, don't come, is really very, very difficult. And where are most people coming from? They're coming from a country called Turkey. And what has the European Union done in the last 2 weeks? They've been in an extended summit with Turkey that concludes this Thursday. And here is what is proposed by the European Union. The deal is that we gave Turkey 3 billion euros with a promise that fewer migrants would cross to the Greek islands. But so far this year, the numbers coming are 30 times greater than they were in 2015. And so the Turks have asked for another 3 billion, which we're going to pay them. And a new migrant deal, which is that everybody in a Greek island who doesn't qualify for refugee status will be sent back to Turkey in return for 1 Syrian that they will give to us. So we've given them 6 billion, yet the numbers won't change. And on top of that, from June of this year, the European Union is giving visa-free access to 77 million people from Turkey. In theory, they can only stay for 90 days. But in practice, huge numbers will disappear or will claim family reunion. And if that wasn't enough, what we've now agreed, and by the way, our Prime Minister, Dave, has since 2005 been an enthusiastic supporter of Turkey joining the European Union. We've now agreed to fast-track Turkish accession to be a member of the European Union. I mean, the deal the Turks have done, I mean, what a pity that David Cameron didn't have a Turk doing his renegotiation. But I have to say, the answer from us must be loud and it must be clear, and it is no to political union with Turkey. We don't want it. We don't want it. Not only is that country, 97% of it actually in Asia anyway, but you only have to look at the fact that the boss of Europol said last week there are now 3,000 to 5,000 Islamic terrorists that have come into Europe in the course of the last 2 years using the migrant crisis as cover, to know that if you want Britain to be safer and more secure, if you want Britain to do all that it can to insulate itself from Islamic terrorism, the only sensible and safe thing to do is to vote to leave the European Union and to take back control of our borders. To do that. And I don't want scenes such as those we saw on New Year's Eve in Cologne ever to happen in a British city. If we take in too many people at once from countries where women at best are seen as second-class citizens, that is what we are storing up for our future. This is not about being against anybody. It's not about being against anybody. It's about being for our people, our culture, our communities, our country. It's about being for recognizing the sacrifice that was made by those that went before us in the last century and twice in war fought to defend our values. And this battle, and you can see it on the one side, there's Goldman Sachs, the Prime Minister, most of the Labour Party, and some big businesses lined up together, and against them are the people. And this is what this battle's about. It's about the people versus the politicians. This must be, you must become our people's army in our modern day peasants' revolt. We must say that our political class have betrayed the trust we put in them. They lied to us about it being a common market, and they go on lying to us about a deal being legally binding when clearly it is not. This is our time to rise up against the establishment, to take back our country. We want our country back. We want our country back. Do you want your country back? Well, then say it with me. Say it with me. We want our country back. One more time. We want our country back. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're a bit tougher on Turkey tonight and stuff, but it's madness. You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.